10-year-old Kate Sanders was surrounded by luxury and wealth from an early age. Her parents were influential businessmen and did everything possible to ensure their beloved daughter had everything she needed. Few of Kate's peers could boast of having a personal driver or a nanny that took care of them while their parents were at work. However, despite it all, Mr. and Mrs. Sanders tried to raise their daughter the right way and tried not to indulge her every whim. The parents wanted Kate to grow up understanding that she needed to work for everything in her life and not just count on the help of her parents. Therefore, the Sanders couple planned a great future for Kate, providing her with everything she needed to achieve success. They set up a bank account with a tidy sum for her. It was meant to pay for their daughter's education at a prestigious university. Kate's life seemed very calm and predictable at the time. That was probably because the girl didn't think her life could be any different. As if to confirm this suspicion, something happened soon, which completely changed her attitude about life. It was a regular day, when everything went as usual and there was no indication of upcoming trouble. That morning, the family driver Andrew took Mr. and Mrs. Sanders to their office and then returned for Kate to take the girl to school. After that, the driver did some of the errands assigned by the head of the family, took the car for an oil change, and then picked up Kate from school. Then, barely having enough time for a cup of coffee, Andrew went to get Mr. and Mrs. Sanders as they were done with work. But these were far from all the assignments for the day. The driver was also supposed to take Kate to all of her after-school activities, such as the second language, dance, and music classes. Of course, the after-school activities took up a lot of Kate's time, and she often returned home after dark. And that evening, before taking Kate to her classes, Andrew had to take Mr. Sanders to the airport. This was an unplanned trip. It turned out that Mr. Sanders needed to fly to the end of the country to urgently deal with some issues at one of the company branches. Therefore, when Andrew finally got back and put Kate in the back seat to take her to classes, he was literally about to collapse from fatigue. The situation was further aggravated by the fact that the unplanned trip to the airport threw off the schedule, and now Andrew had to hurry. Unfortunately, as the car was entering a sharp turn, Andrew didn't slow down in time, and the car skidded to the side of the road. Since the speed was high, the man couldn't bring the car to a stop fast enough, and so it crashed into a pile of construction waste that remained after the dismantling of an old plant nearby. It was a shapeless pile of broken bricks, interspersed with scraps of metal rods and beams sticking out in different directions. After the crash, the car was immediately filled with the distinct smell of gasoline. The fuel tank was probably damaged in the crash, causing it to leak. Since Andrew had stopped at the gas station after his trip to the airport, the tank was full. Fuel slowly poured onto the ground, leaking under the body of the mangled car. The situation was clearly dangerous and unpredictable. It is hard to say where the spark came from, but it lit the gasoline that leaked from the punctured tank. Fortunately, there was a bus stop in front of the old plant. Since it wasn't that late at night, there were people waiting for the bus there. In fact, they became the unwitting witnesses to the drama unfolding before their eyes. Look! The fuel tank is probably broken. There's gonna be an explosion. Eyewitnesses shouted, not knowing what to do in this situation. Some of them rushed to help, but the fire around the car caused them to stop in fear, their knees trembling. No, just give up on it. Don't even think about it. The car will explode at any minute, said the most seasoned observers who didn't want to risk their lives, knowing how dangerous the situation was. Meanwhile, there was real hell inside the car. The driver was unconscious, and little Kate was banging her hands on the window, trying to get out. The passenger door was jammed during the accident, and the girl couldn't get out on her own. People at the bus stop were screaming and crying out in horror, and someone, pulling themselves together, called 911. Suddenly, a seemingly unremarkable man stepped out from the crowd of the casual spectators. Having thrown the hood of an old jacket over his head, he headed towards the burning car. "He's crazy! He's gonna die!" an agitated woman's voice called after him. But the young man continued to walk confidently, as if there was no fear in his soul. The stranger's clothes looked shabby and unkempt, and he looked a bit like a homeless person. But despite his appearance, the man had a brave heart beating in his chest. Having run up to the car engulfed in flames, the stranger grabbed a piece of pipe lying nearby and having ordered the girl to duck, he broke the window in just one blow. Then, without wasting any time, he reached into the car, grabbed the girl, and pulled her out of the burning vehicle. At that moment, the man's torn jacket and his long, uncombed hair caught fire, but the brave rescuer didn't even seem to notice it, running away from the car, all while covering the girl with his body. 3 seconds later, the fire reached the fuel tank, and a powerful explosion ensued. The girl and her savior got thrown aside by the blast wave. At that moment, a man ran up to them, the one who'd called 911 a minute later. He picked up the girl from the ground and hurried to the ambulance that had just arrived. Meanwhile, her savior took off his burning jacket and, having put out the flames in his hair, walked away briskly. Since all the attention was directed at the girl, no one even noticed when the burned stranger left the scene. The doctors examined Kate, and apart from a couple of minor abrasions, didn't see anything that could pose a serious threat to her life. However, the doctors still decided to send the girl to the hospital for observation for a couple of days to make sure there wouldn't be any consequences from the shock caused by the accident. While she was getting the initial exam, the girl kept turning her head in all directions, asking, "Where's the man who saved me? Why can't I see him anywhere?" But no one was really listening to Kate at the time, since they were all concerned only with the state of her health. The girl kept crying a lot, both at the hospital and after being discharged. She felt very sorry for the driver, Andrew, who died in the accident, and whom she thought of as a close friend. And she also couldn't stop thinking about the person who saved her in that terrible car accident. Who was he? What was his name? Even though the girl had asked her parents to find this brave man, their search was unsuccessful. The mysterious stranger seemed to have fallen off the face of the earth, and there was no one who could provide any information about him. Time went by. This accident changed Kate's life forever. It stirred up the kindest feeling in her soul, making her want to help other people in need. At the age of 15, the girl joined the ranks of a volunteer organization, and together with like-minded people, began to help homeless and sick people. Kate really liked what she was doing, which was evident by her happy face and her shining eyes. By the age of 25, the driven young lady was already head of a charitable organization, which she founded herself. In addition to her own investments, the organization received many donations from people who weren't indifferent to other people's problems. The organization had its own cafeteria and even its own medical center, where people in trouble could receive qualified assistance. One day, while serving hot food in the dining room, Kate noticed a hunched, thin man with a huge, ugly burn scar covering half of his face. He stood near the entrance and hesitantly fiddled with a battered baseball cap in his hands. Feeling awkward and embarrassed, the young lady came closer to the man and asked, "Excuse me, can I help you with something? Your scar, does it hurt?" The stranger looked intently at Kate and then said, "Miss, I'd be very grateful for a plate of hot soup and a couple of slices of bread. And the scar doesn't bother me at all. I got it 15 years ago when I saved a little girl from a burning car. Trust me, I've already gotten used to the fact that my face is so ugly." Kate couldn't contain her feelings. Touching the stranger's shoulder, she said in a trembling voice, "It's me. I'm that girl. You saved me 15 years ago. I've been looking for you for so long. Why did you leave the scene so quickly that day?" The man smiled awkwardly in response, wiping away a tear that was running down his face, and then he shared his story. As it turned out, Kate's rescuer was named Cameron Reed, and he spent most of his life on the street. The man never knew his parents and grew up in an orphanage. Growing up, Mr. Reed began to trade in petty theft in supermarkets, only ever stealing food from them. Of course, this trade caused the homeless thief with many problems with the law. That's why he was so quick to leave after the accident. He wanted to avoid getting caught by the police. "I don't know how I can thank you, but please let me give you some money. I can give you a lot of money so that you can get yourself a house and you won't have to live outside," offered Kate. But Mr. Reed just shook his head and said that he was already used to living on the street and didn't need her money. But having worked at the volunteer organization for so many years, Kate wasn't going to abandon her plan so easily. Instead of money, The girl offered Mr. Reed a job at her charity organization, which would provide him with shelter and hot food, and he would also get paid for his work. Mr. Reed's face brightened, and Kate realized that she had hit the bullseye with her proposal. After all, more than anything in the world, the homeless man wanted to have the family that he never had. And now, helping other poor people like himself, Mr. Reed felt like all the workers of the volunteer organization were his huge family that took care of him and loved him very much.